Meanwhile, the Chinese currency is growing stronger with each passing day. As the world dumps the US dollar, more and more countries are turning to the Chinese yuan.
China is open to talks with Malaysia on forming an Asian monetary fund.
In recent times, Malaysia's decision to move away from the dollar has captured global attention. This strategic shift reflects Malaysia's proactive stance towards its economic and financial sovereignty. The nation is gradually reducing its reliance on the dollar as a result of factors like exchange rate volatility, external economic dependencies, and the desire to diversify its reserves. Malaysia seeks to bolster its economic resilience and explore alternative trade and investment avenues. This departure from the dollar signifies a pivotal step in shaping its financial landscape and fostering stronger regional partnerships in an evolving global economic order. Why is Malaysia de-dollarizing? Stay with us to find out. After the Asian financial crisis of 1997, Japan was the first to propose the creation of an Asian monetary fund. Anwar Ibrahim, a rising political star in Malaysia at the time, was a strong proponent of this plan. After 26 turbulent years, especially for Anwar, the concept is revived. In the course of his trip to China earlier this month, the current Prime Minister of Malaysia, Anwar, was successful in gaining President Xi Jinping's backing for the idea of resurrecting the notion of an Asia-centered global funding organization. A plan similar to this, one would have been regarded as too forward-looking 26 years ago. After then, everything underwent a fundamental change. The Chinese economy is doing rather well and currently has the position of being the second largest in the world. India is the world's sixth biggest economy at the moment, but according to projections, it will pass both Japan and Germany by the year 2025 to become the world's third largest economy. By 2030, with the economy's center of gravity expected to have shifted eastward, it will be practical to have an Asian monetary fund. Since China views the International Monetary Fund as being dominated by Western nations, it seems reasonable that it would wish to form a regional organization that can supplement the IMF. The Chinese government is eager to show that it is the dominant power in this region. When their country's economies are in danger, leaders are frequently required to provide a lifeline to those they lead. The yuan has to be maintained as a reserve currency if it is going to displace the dollar as the single most important source of strength in the region. Only then can it hope to become the new global hegemon. It stands to reason that China would have a bigger voice in the financial structure of Asia as it climbs to prominence and takes on a more significant role. Anwar sees a role for himself in this Game of Thrones. De-dollarization is even further off than the notion of an Asian monetary fund, which may seem like a pipe dream in and of itself. In this case, Anwar has demonstrated that his words are supported by his actions. As a result of a policy shift that took place not too long ago, commercial transactions between Malaysia and India can now be conducted in any currency. The Indian embassy in Kuala Lumpur was featured in the press in a manner that was rather reserved and formal, since he was a key figure during the 1997 Asian financial crisis and may have sealed his own fate with his controversial views on how Malaysia should respond. Anwar should have firm opinions on how to best stabilize the region in the face of the current economic uncertainty. Anwar undoubtedly has at the forefront of his mind the need to restore financial stability to the region and safeguard it from future oscillations that have their roots in the United States, such as the 2008 financial crisis. The path to an Asian monetary fund may not be without hurdles. Indonesia, for example, does not share the same level of excitement over the idea as Malaysia does. Erlangga Hartarto, Indonesia's coordinating minister for economic affairs, has mentioned the difficulty in securing consent from member countries in ASEAN as one of the obstacles facing the country's economic development. In addition to this, he pointed out, rather pragmatically, that convincing member countries to commit cash could not be an easy task. In spite of the fact that the IMF may have certain faults of its own, it will be difficult to build an IMF due to the widespread concept of leadership. The United States of America has put itself in a position to provide economic leadership on a worldwide scale. While this may come into question in the years to come, there is currently no indication that the United States is planning to give up its current position. Peterson Institute for International Economics founder Fred Bergsten flatly rejected Japan's proposal for an Asian monetary fund a year after it was originally made in 1998. Instead, Bergsten proposed extensive changes to the way the proposal is structured. He was concerned that the Japanese proposal would drive a further breach between Asia and North America and weaken the INA's authority. he proposed a Asia-Pacific fund in which the United States would play a starring role. Despite the obstacles, Anwar's efforts to promote de-dollarization may ultimately be more successful. The European Union, along with China, Russia, and Brazil, is attempting to lessen its dependency on the U.S. currency. Erlangga of Indonesia has voiced his displeasure that local currency settlement is not often used to settle transactions between Indonesia and China. Given that the yuan is only used in roughly 2% of worldwide payments and less than 3% of global currency reserves, the dream of having the yuan replace the dollar may take a long time. The road to internationalizing the yuan may be long, but it would usher in a new era of Asian economic preeminence. And up front is where Anwar would rather be. What are the disadvantages of de-dollarization for the U.S.? One of the most significant drawbacks of de-dollarization for the United States is the possibility that it would result in a reduction in the value of the dollar. The United States dollar is currently the predominant reserve currency in the world. This status indicates that countries all over the world keep significant quantities of U.S. dollars in their reserves of foreign currency. If more countries start to move away from using the U.S. dollar as their primary currency, then the demand for U.S. dollars will diminish, which has the potential to cause the value of the dollar to fall. That might drive up the cost of imports as well as inflation, which would be harmful to consumers in the United States. De-dollarization could also make it more difficult for the United States to deploy economic sanctions as a tool in its foreign policy, which is another of the strategy's potential drawbacks for the country. The United States has imposed economic sanctions as a form of pressure on nations like Iran, North Korea, and Russia. According to Reuters, the United States froze $300 billion, about 1.32 trillion RM, of Russia's gold and FX reserves after Russia invaded Ukraine. This amounts to approximately 1.32 trillion RM. The United States will have a harder time enforcing its sanctions against countries that find alternatives to trading in U.S. dollars and reduce their holdings of the global reserve currency. A third disadvantage of de-dollarization is that it could reduce the ability of the U.S. to borrow money at low interest rates, according to the Council on Foreign Relations, CRF. Currently, because the U.S. dollar is the world's dominant reserve currency, countries are willing to lend money to the U.S. at low interest rates. However, if more countries move away from the U.S. dollar, it could make it harder for the U.S. to borrow money at low interest rates, which could make it harder for the government to finance budget deficits. The official numbers from the International Monetary Fund show that country holdings of the U.S. dollar have decreased from above 70% in 1999 to 59% in 2021. According to Horizon SLJ Asset Management, the dollar's status as a reserve currency declined in 2022 at a rate that was 10 times quicker than in the preceding 2 decades. In an interview that took place the week before last with Tucker Carlson of Fox News, former President of the United States Donald Trump compared the possibility of China leading a significant chunk of the global weight from the dollar standard to the United States being defeated in a global battle. That brings our coverage up to date. I'm grateful that you watched this video. I sincerely hope that you find it enjoyable. In addition, if this is your first time visiting this channel, I strongly recommend that you subscribe to it and click the like button. In addition to that, you can see all of my most recent videos. We'll chat again in the next one.